the Boiler Ball pregame show. Tonight we greet you from Mackey Arena, where the Purdue Boilermakers will play the Northwestern Wildcats in a game which has a whole lot of extra meaning when it comes to the Big Ten standings. Right now our Boilermakers are in second place, looking up at the Wisconsin Badgers, with Northwestern just one game behind in third place. I'm Rob Blackman, and thank you for joining us tonight. To my left is Chris Forman, to my right is Bobby Riddell, and we appreciate the fact you're giving us a few minutes for a game that will tip off at 6:30 this evening here at Mackey Arena. Before we move ahead to tonight's game, let us revisit the Sunday win in Piscataway over Rutgers. Purdue wins 68-60, but as Chris Forman can affirm, Purdue won a game in a way they rarely do. Purdue was out-rebounded. Purdue also lost the turnover battle, yet still won the game by 8 points. That rarely happens, Mr. Forman.
Yeah, it's really rare that Purdue wins a game when it doesn't get the extra possessions. Coach Painter loves the extra possessions of offensive rebounding and turnovers. So Purdue's now 6-48 under Painter when they lose the turnover and rebounding battle in a game. So very rare, and we actually, it wasn't even close either. We lost by four rebounds, 5 turnovers, so it wasn't like, it was a 1-1 thing here. So just very lucky to get a win. I think it says a lot more about Purdue's defense and the way it played against Rutgers than anything, that the defense carried that team to the win.
Do you happen to know the last time Purdue lost the rebounding battle, lost the turnover margin, and still won a game?
It was Old Dominion in the NCAA tournament in 2019. Sure. So long time ago. It doesn't happen very often, but usually when it happens, Purdue's not very successful.
Out in Hartford, Connecticut, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Hartford, Connecticut. Purdue would go on to win the next round game against Villanova. I remember that one well. Didn't quite remember the Old Dominion game as well as I should have. Let's follow up on what Chris talked about, Bob. The fact that Purdue was so good defensively allowed them to overcome all of those errors. Purdue held Rutgers to 20 first half points.
Yeah, the first half defense was elite for sure. I mean, we knew this Rutgers team, struggles a bit offensively. They're not nearly as talented as they've been in recent years, but as Coach Painter talked to you about in the pregame show, they certainly have some guys that any given night can get it going. And on this particular first half, they did not have any of those guys getting it going. That was a lot of credit to that Purdue defense. So really strong. You've built that halftime lead. We've got to have it now, building these big halftime leads. And that was another one where we have that halftime advantage against Rutgers. And then even though the Rutgers made that push, fortunately we just had enough cushion to hold them off in the end.
Bobby mentions the halftime lead. I want you folks at home to understand how we three work as a team. We work as a team. Normally Chris here is in charge of all the statistical information. But on Sunday, my broadcast partner, Bobby Riddell, he came up with a great nugget on the stats that even Chris hadn't thought about, and that is halftime leads for our team.
Halftime leads, 11 consecutive games. There's been a halftime margin of 10 or more, or as it turns out, 11 or more between these Purdue basketball games. Purdue has been the beneficiary of 10 of those 11 games having that double-digit lead, whereas there was one time at Nebraska in that 11-game stretch where we were actually trailing by 11 at the half. But those other 7 games, we're up double digits at the half and really just kind of putting the game away in the first half, which is pretty wild to think about that you've had 11 straight games where you don't have a single-digit halftime margin.
Now, before you get too excited about halftime leads, let me remind you of this. Purdue led at halftime in Evanston back on December the 1st and didn't win the game against Northwestern.
But not by double digits, just 8. So that was the key. But no, you're right. I mean, we had a nice first half at Northwestern, had that double-digit lead at Northwestern. We gave it away a little bit the last couple minutes of that first half, which ended up giving Northwestern that momentum to start the second half, because they really came out to start the second half at Northwestern and put it to us, got the game really close, and then it was a dogfight the rest of the way.
Ended up being an overtime loss, 92-88. Look, Purdue's only lost 2 games all season, both in the Big Ten, both on the road at Northwestern and the other at Nebraska. Speaking of our Boilermakers, Chris Forman, we saw something happen on Sunday that maybe for some of us we'll never see again, at least with our own live 2 eyes, and that was a Purdue player go over the 2,000-point scoring mark in Zack Eeds.
Yeah, you think about all the great players that have played here, that he's the 6th player to ever do it. Just a remarkable feat for a guy that doesn't play a whole lot. Didn't play a whole lot the first 2 years. Now the last 2 years, obviously, he's played a lot. But, again, the superlatives that you can describe of Zack Eeds are just, they're enormous. We could spend a whole show talking about him here. He's definitely left his mark. He's going to go down as one of the best big men in college basketball history, in my opinion. He's going to win back-to-back National Player of the Year. Just the things that he's done in his 4 years is ridiculous, and the stat lines he's putting up. he's going to go down one of the best in NCAA history.
So to follow up what Chris was talking about, if we wanted to do a whole show dedicated to Zack Eeds superlatives, we would be here until about halftime of the game tonight. So we'll try to keep it at a minimum, even though it's maybe not fair to Zack. But 2,000 points now for Zack, also 1,000 plus rebounds. He's 3 blocks away, 3 blocks, could happen tonight, of reaching 200 blocks. When he gets to that point, whether it's tonight or maybe the next game, he will do something that only 2 other players in the history of college basketball have done.
Yeah, he'll go over 2,000 points, 1,000 rebounds, 200 blocks, and shoot 60% from the field. Guys that have done it, pretty good players. David Robinson at Navy and Patrick Ewing at Georgetown, which was 35 years ago.
Right.
You know, those 2 guys. So no one since that has done that. The fact that he's doing it in a career that he's only playing 23 minutes a game, I mean, if he plays 30 minutes a game, his numbers are close to 3,000 and 1,500. So just the numbers he is putting up are mind-blowing, and, you know, we're lucky to see him play every night.
Right now, Zack is 1 double-double away from tying Terry Dissinger for the most double-doubles in the history of Purdue basketball. Right now, Zack is tied with Rick Mount for the most consecutive double-figure scoring games. Zack has 72 straight games where he's been in double figures. But to be fair to the Rocket, he only played 72 games. He scored in double figures every game he ever played in.
Yeah, the Rocket clearly was getting it up and putting it in because that dude had a flame. But, you know, Zack Eeds and the Rocket do have one thing in common. The Rocket didn't have a three-point line. Well, Zack doesn't utilize the three-point line either, so at least both have that in common from that standpoint.
You think about how dominating Zack Eeds has been, and we've had a chance to witness this obviously up close and personal. But think about this, Bob, and Chris was kind of taking us down this path. He was not even a full-time starter as a freshman and a sophomore. As a matter of fact, as assistant coach Brandon Brantley told us on the coaches show Monday night, when Zack showed up on campus, they thought they were going to redshirt him. What?
Yeah, how about that? I mean, Matt Harms ends up transferring, opens the door for that immediate playing time for Zack Eeds. And, man, that's really paid dividends because Zack came in as a freshman, looked pretty good right away, and is clearly just taken off year after year. But to your point about not playing a lot of minutes, I mean, think about like the minutes that Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer have got to play as freshmen and sophomore. Zack didn't sniff those kind of minutes, but then, you know, his junior and senior year has just gone berserk and has been able to put out, you know, numbers that have been amazing.
You know, I'll say this about Zack when he first arrived there. The plan was to redshirt him when he signed. He got here, Matt Harms left. That summer, I mean, it was, you watch him play and you're like, who is this guy? Is he going to be able to help us? And like Ethan Morton, Mason Gillis were saying the same thing. They're like, man, I don't know if this guy's going to be helping us. Coach Painter got COVID in late August, and he said he came back after the 2 weeks or whatever, and he was like, Zack was a different player when he left. And
2 weeks.
During practice, he would just say, keep throwing him the ball, keep throwing him the ball, keep throwing him the ball. And they did, and you know, his improvement's been really, really something to see.
If you want a little inside peek behind the curtain on that story about Zack being not very good when he first showed up here in West Lafayette, listen to the latest edition of the Boiler Ball podcast. Carson Barrett is our special guest. He's a senior. Carson talks about the first time they played open gym with Zack and how bad the rest of the team thought he was. Now think about that. They're like, well, this guy's not very good.
This guy can't hack it.
I think it turned out to be just fine. All right, we need to get on to this Northwestern matchup. Talk about guys that can hack it. Boo Buie. Tonight, he'll probably become the second leading scorer in the history of Northwestern basketball. He's a fifth-year player, granted. He's 24 years old, granted. But that doesn't take away from his ability and his skill level. One of the best players in our league, hands down.
Completely agree, and I think he is a perfect example of seeing a player mature and improve year after year. I mean, because as a freshman, he obviously had some ability. He played a lot of minutes, probably started from day one, if I recall. But, you know, he definitely was rough around the edges. His shot selection was very questionable. He didn't take care of the ball all the time, decision-making. But now, I mean, the guy is just a fine-tuned engine machine. I mean, he's unbelievable as far as taking care of the basketball. He can score at all three levels, driving to the basket, his in-between game with his floaters, off balance, off one leg, incredible. And then he can obviously make it rain from deep, as we, you know, saw firsthand in Evanston. So to see his maturation as a player has been extremely impressive.
Bob, go ahead.
I'll say this too. Like I've watched a lot of Big Ten basketball this year, and you watch Northwestern play, and he is fun to watch.
Oh, yeah.
Like you hate playing against him. Like you know, we have not had luck against him, but you watch him, and he's unbelievable. I watched him play the Illinois game the other night, and it gets down under 5 minutes, and it's a close game. Like it's automatic. He is as clutch as they come in this league.
Chris talked about how you hate to play him. He's averaging 29 points a game against Purdue in the last 2 games. Both games, Purdue was ranked number 1. Both times, Purdue lost. Northwestern is 2-19 all time in their school history against number 1. Guess who the 2 wins are against? Our Boilermakers, both last year and this year. These are, by the way, should bring this up too. These are the 2 best three-point shooting teams in the Big Ten.
Yeah, Northwestern so far in Big Ten play, the best.
Yeah.
Been really impressive. Not only is Boo Buie making shots, but they have 2 other guards who we saw firsthand in Evanston as well, who can really make shots. Ryan Langmore and Ty Berry can really fill it up from deep. Of course, Brooks Barnheiser, that undersized 4, not shooting the best percentage, but in Big Ten play, he's been shooting it better. And he's the guy you got to watch out for. He can make threes, and he's got a really good mid-range game as well. So this Northwestern team, a lot of guys who can step out and make shots, and Purdue, from a perimeter defensive standpoint, has to really be on their game tonight.
Barnheiser averaging 18 points a game in the last 7 games. He's really picked it up on the offensive end, and of course he's a Lafayette kid, so we secretly root for him, except when he's playing our Boilermakers. A couple last thoughts here. While these are the 2 best three-point shooting teams, Chris, in the Big Ten, rebounding-wise, there's a major discrepancy. Purdue leads the Big Ten in rebounding, Northwestern last in the league.
Yeah, if Purdue's going to win this game, they're going to have to dominate the glass again. The one biggest key that they're going to have to do is take care of the ball, because in the last 2 games against Northwestern, we're minus 21 in the turnover race, and you've only lost by 6 and 4 points in overtime. So if you have 5 less turnovers a game, you're winning those games. So Purdue won the battle of the boards last time against Northwestern by about 25, just killed them on the offensive glass. Purdue's going to have to do that again tonight to beat Northwestern, and then take care of the ball. I mean, plain and simple, that's all it is. Purdue did not play well up in Evanston at all. I thought Northwestern played about as perfect as they could, and it was an overtime game. So if Purdue plays the way it can, hopefully we can come out on top.
Zack Eeds went for 35 points, 14 rebounds, 3 blocks, and Purdue lost because Boo Buie went for 31 points, 9 assists, and no turnovers for the Northwestern Wildcats. Final thought here, Bob Riddell. Purdue, if indeed they want to make that Sunday game in Madison against the Badgers a huge game for deciding who's going to be atop the Big Ten standings, they need to take care of business tonight and not get caught looking ahead to the Badgers on Sunday.
No, for sure. I mean, that game of Sunday is going to be massive for Big Ten title implications, but this game's huge as well. Northwestern's right there. They have a very favorable schedule as you close out the Big Ten year. We talked about that earlier. They have a chance to maybe go 7-3, 8-2, something like that down the stretch with their schedule. So Northwestern, you got to pick them off right now. They beat you at their place. You got to win this head-to-head, and we should have plenty of motivation to get these guys, considering what they've done to us the last couple times. So I think our team's going to be ready, and should be a raucous environment. I think our crowd remembers it as well.
I'll say this too: our guys are ready. Like, they want this one pretty good. We were talking about at practice after practice yesterday, and Zach's like, I haven't beat him in 2 years, and he goes, I'm 3-2 against them. I don't want to be 500. Like,
I like hungry
he's ready.
Zach.
Like,
I like hungry Zach.
Like, they are. They're quite hungry. And Braden Smith, we should call about him not being on the Bob Cousy Cousy Award list.
Yep.
Like, this guy will have a little extra motivation tonight too, and he plays very well with a chip on his shoulder.
If you didn't see it yesterday, the top 10 for the Bob Cousy Award list was revealed, and there was no Braden Smith on there. We're still wondering why that was, but that's a topic for another night. For Bob, for Chris, I'm Rob. Please join us tonight on the radio network. We'd love to have you. 6:31, the exact tip-off time for Purdue and Northwestern. This has been the Boiler Ball pregame show. Have a great night, everyone. Boiler up and hammer down.